Guys, and welcome back to another session. Now, there's a lot of ways to kind of clean this up and clean up our code, and I think the beginning of that journey starts with declaring function. And what is a function? I think that sounds like super complex, right? And at the very core, functions are just the way to abstract some code and offer up a very basic way to interact with some abstraction of code. What's abstraction? We could say that this print or this input is abstraction, right? Because obviously that input function is doing a bunch of things under the hood to make, to prompt the user, to get the information, to give it back to put in a variable. And that's a more complex function. It's probably doing a lot of, lower level things, to prompt the user, get that information back. But what if we, let's start really basic, right? What if we want to take our hello formatter or string formatter and our greeting program and kind of put that into a function? Well, in Python, that's super simple. To declare a function, we put def in front of it. This is saying, like pretty much, keep thinking of it as a shorthand of defining a function. And we're gonna give that name. We'll call this greeting. Greeting fun. Let's call this, greeting. For shorthand. And let's go ahead and we're gonna move this greeting and this print in here. So now we have our greeting variable and we have our print line. And let's take our prompt, move it down here. We're going to create another function and we're going to call this main. And we're going to use this as our main function to start our application. And what that means is we're gonna call main down here, and inside what we're gonna do is when main gets called, we're gonna prompt for our what is your name, and we're actually gonna pass the name into the greeting. What we're gonna say is, I want to give this a different variable name. Cool. So let's read this before we run it, right? So now we have our greeting func and we have our main function. And as you can see, actually, let me do this first. Let's comment out our main caller. So this is how you do comments in Python. There's a couple of different ways. This is the main way you'll see it. It's just a little, hashtag / bang signal, whatever you want to call it. And when we actually run our application, nothing's going to happen. And the reason for that is because we actually created these two functions. We have main and we have greeting function. And functions need to be invoked. And what I mean by that is they have to be called. So for example, main does call the greeting function, but nothing's calling main. So when we go ahead and we uncomment this main and we run this, we're going to get the what is your name? So I'll type my name in again. And we'll get our greeting func printed out to us. And we're pretty much good. Now, let's do this real quick. I'm going to say hit any. So now our program's not exiting by itself. So after we run the program, we're here with the hit any key to continue, and then we'll just hit enter, or any key. This will exit our program. So functions, super cool. You can do very awesome things. We can also change this to where we actually pass in our greeting too. So we can actually say that greeting is not defined here. We can say it's defined globally. This is a global function. And what we can do, let's do it this way first. We can define this in global space. And then when we run this, we can see it says, hello, how are you? Hit any key to continue. Very cool. And then let's say if we wanted this to be explicit, we can say user greeting. And then we can make this another parameter gets called into this function. Then what we can do is we can just type in the greeting here. When we run this, you'll see that Now we're actually passing greeting in. It's getting set as this user greeting variable inside this function, and then we're passing it to that hello formatter, the greeting formatter we created. So this is a cool way. We have our global space of declaring a variable, and the reason that would be valuable, right, is you know, let's say if we wanted to do like we wanted to change that greeting. Let's say that we call greeting function again, and we pass in the name that we prompted. Let's say we said like do that. Now when we call this, we'll prompt a name, and then you'll see we get our first greeting. So hello, how are you? Then when we hit our continue, we'll get another greeting. I hope you are well. This is a good way that we can define that function, get usability out of it, and be able to pass different parameters to it all the time, which is pretty cool. So basic building blocks of writing some Python function. All right, cool. So now that we have our basic functions down, I want to talk about some very, very basic data structure type, or actually I want to talk about some basic types in Python. So Python's a little weird. Everything essentially is an object. Almost everything's an object. Like strings are technically an object. And what I mean by an object is when you have something like greeting, for example, you actually can do, it has methods on it. Like a string is actually considered a string object. And if you don't know what objects are, without defining one, I want to make this very generic as possible. In software engineering, especially in object-oriented programming languages, which Python 100% is, other languages that are object-oriented would be something like Java, something like C#, something like Node.js is very object-oriented. Like these are, well, I wouldn't say very, like you can do them as, you know, you can use objects, you can't, but specifically in Python, almost everything's an object. So if I wanted to like maybe, for example, let's do this. Let's say we can do greeting dot, and we can just say like, I want to say capitalize. Let's do like let's do upper, right? So, and what I mean by that is there's a function on this type, this string type. It's essentially these are called methods. They're functions, but when they're functions that are a part of a class, they're called methods. So if it's a standalone function, like for example, our greeting func, this is a function. If we look at upper, this is what's called a method. And you'll see that VS Code will actually explain that to us. So if we hover over greeting func, we'll see it says function greeting func. And if we hover over upper, you'll see it will say method. And the reason why is because upper only exists if we already have a string object. We can dot and then call upper. And what that will do for us is when we call our program again, we'll get our basic greeting, and when we call it again, the second time, because we have dot upper, it will scream it at us, right? Like, you know, how are you? So this is really cool, you know, a thing specifically in Python, because if you have a type, it's really easy. If you have any object, it's really easy to understand what you can do with it. A lot of other languages might have like a strings package where you do like strings dot upper or to upper, and then you pass in the string. Because everything's an object in Python, you can kind of just method off of that object already. You don't have to understand there's another package. You can just do dot, and then you can see if you're in your IDE, as long as you have it set up correctly, you'll see all the methods you can apply to it. And there's quite a lot on strings, right? I mean, you can do, you can check if it ends with something. You can find something in it. You can format it. You can get some index. You can lower it. You can replace some string in it. You can strip some string out of it. Let's say if you wanted to put, you wanted to remove, let's say like R out of it, for example. Do our prompt again. That obviously didn't work. Once return copy the string with a leading and trailing white space. Yeah, that's not what I want to do. I want to do replace. Sorry. So that will only take it if it's on either side of that. So what we'll do is we'll do replace instead. And we'll put in our old string, which is R, and we'll replace it with nothing. So if you see there's just, hello, I didn't pass in a name that time, so it just said hello. Then it said, how are you? We hit our